But it soon became apparent to John that he had been deliberately not told about the meeting and therefore wasn't there. And that, I think it would be too strong a word to say that caused him to become suspicious of Gough, but it caused him to have a sort of uneasiness about Gough.
It's true the Governor-General was concerned about that first Executive Council meeting, but that was only in retrospect.
But Kerr, of course, by that stage was being asked by some of his mates, because he'd moved up Government House, of course. He often saw some... he was being courted by a lot of distinguished people, and he enjoyed it. And he was very embarrassed. I said, "Oh, you've been authorising any billion-dollar loans recently?" And he was getting quite embarrassed by it. But he never raised it with me afterwards at all. Never.
How long have you been involved in this particular aspect of your business? Raising money?
Raising money only about 1 year.
Only about 1 year?
That's right.
What was your stand?
Labor relied upon this obscure money dealer, Tirath Kemlani. But Kemlani never raised the money, and the government's reputation was compromised. The politics of 1975 was dominated by the loans affair, ministerial sackings and economic upheaval, which only tempted Malcolm Fraser to force an election. The clinching event was the forced resignation of Minerals Minister Rex Connor, when it was revealed that he and Kemlani had negotiated about the loan after the cancellation of the authority. When Connor resigned, Fraser pulled the trigger.
It was because the whole record of the government over a considerable period was disgraceful. There had been scandal after scandal. There had been deception of the Executive Council, deception of the Governor-General himself. And, you know, it's easy to forget these things now.
Fraser was now prepared to use the powers of the Senate to block the budget until Whitlam agreed to call a general election. An election Labor was certain to lose. This was the first fateful step that precipitated the 1975 crisis. Fraser was lucky thanks to the Queensland Premier. Joe Bjelke-Petersen had defied convention and appointed an anti-Labor unknown, Albert Patrick Field, in place of a Queensland Labor senator who had suddenly died.
Could I ask you a reaction towards a number of other leading Labor people, towards Mr Whitlam, for example? What do you think of him?
Well, I had a bit of time from the first, but when he subjected the Premier of Queensland to such abuse...
What abuse is that?
As a Bible-bashing bastard, well, I could never vote for Mr Whitlam.
I was adamantly opposed to a final act which would block the budget. We'd had 2 instances in my life in Victoria where an upper house had blocked the budget, and I think most people, certainly I and others, thought that it was improper.
The opposition party room endorsed Fraser's decision on the 15th of October. They decided for tactical reasons to defer, not reject the budget, and Field's appointment gave Fraser the numbers to do it.
Well, if you defeated the Bills, there's no use asking the Leader of the Opposition to become Prime Minister, because he couldn't get a bill through the House of Representatives. I mean, you get to a total and absolute stalemate. So therefore, we had to put them on ice.
The opposition now has no choice. We will use the power vested in us by the Constitution and delay the passage of the government's money bills through the Senate until the Parliament goes to the people.
Recall these words.
At this point, Whitlam took his epic decision to defy the opposition and the Senate. It would be the greatest battle of his career. Fraser's audacity was met by Whitlam's defiance. The crisis was now joined.
We will not yield to blackmail. We will not be panicked. We will not turn over the government of this country to vested interests, pressure groups and newspaper proprietors whose tactics would destroy the standards and traditions of parliamentary government. The business of government will go on.
Whitlam was so determined that the House of Representatives should prevail over the Senate, because he saw this as the critical issue of our time and of this century.
Whitlam's entire strategy depended upon the acquiescence of Sir John Kerr. He was adamant that Kerr would and should support him. But Whitlam had misread Kerr. From the very start of the crisis, the Governor-General had lost his trust in Whitlam, and he saw a dismissal as a possibility.
So must Sir John Kerr accept your advice, whatever advice you give?
Unquestionably. The Governor-General takes the advice from his Prime Minister and from no one else.
And must act on that advice?
Unquestionably. The Governor-General must act on the advice of his Prime Minister.
There is no tolerance here. He must
None whatever.
Gough proceeded to needle John, I think that's a justified word, publicly announcing constantly that the Governor-General would do exactly what I say. There's no exception. He just has to do exactly what I say. And, of course, that wasn't the position at all. The Governor-General had his own independent rights. And as Gough constantly reiterated this theme, so John became more and more troubled.
Whitlam treated him more or less like an office boy. And if I'd been Kerr, I would have built up a fair head of resentment.
It's true, as Barry Jones says, that Whitlam treats everybody as equals, even the Queen. So I suppose Kerr felt that by being treated as an equal by Whitlam was in some way derogatory to the office.
The day after the budget was deferred, the senior constitutional lawyer within the opposition, Bob Ellicott, released a crucial opinion, a copy of which was requested by Sir John Kerr.
Well, so far as the Governor-General was concerned, I indicated that I thought he had the power to dismiss a government, which meant dismissing the Prime Minister, withdrawing the commission to the Prime Minister, if the government persisted in the attitude that it could govern without supply.
I don't think that Bob Ellicott was right in asserting that whenever there was a possibility of supply being refused, the government had an obligation to resign, the Prime Minister and the Ministry. That means that however dastardly the process, the refusal may be, however self-serving, the government of the day can be put to the sword, and I don't think that was right.
On the night of the 16th of October, there was a state banquet at Yarralumla. It was at this function that Sir John Kerr became alarmed that Whitlam might try to sack him.
Lady Kerr was there, Gough Whitlam and Margaret Whitlam, Tun Abdul Razak and his wife. And in a jesting sort of way, Gough said, I don't know how it cropped up, but Gough said, well, it could be a race between me getting to the Queen to have you dismissed and you terminating my commission as Prime Minister. And everybody laughed. It was a sort of joke. But it was one of those jokes about behind which there was a great deal of meaning.
Well, I just quite lightheartedly, passed it off. And of course, Kerr saw very much more significance in what I said than there was.
It demonstrated that Gough understood that he had the power to go to the Queen and demand that John be sacked. It demonstrated to John that Whitlam knew all about the reserve powers and that the danger that to him that John might exercise them. So it was a very significant little joking interlude.
A few days later, the Governor-General held a private dinner at his Sydney residence, Admiralty House. with the Governor of New South Wales, Sir Roden Cutler. Sir John Kerr's comments at this meeting revealed his determination to keep his counsel from the Prime Minister.
I did say that I thought he should talk to Whitlam, and that, after all, is the requirement. At any rate, Kerr had not discussed it with Whitlam. He made it fairly clear he didn't want to. And I said, well, John, I said, of course the Prime Minister could move beforehand and have your commission withdrawn. And at that stage he became quite animated and said, yes, I know.
For the future of the country.
After nearly a week into the deadlock, there was agitation in the country. Kerr was now prompted by the force of public opinion to look for a solution. With Whitlam's permission, he then began talking to Fraser as well. The first Fraser-Kerr meeting was on the 21st of October.
I thought that if he asked if he could talk to Fraser, then I should agree to that.
You assumed that the Governor-General would act honourably during any such dialogue?
We would have had a cup of tea or a drink, I think, through most of those meetings. That was his general practice. And he was, in some ways, a chatty sort of person. I mean, he liked to talk, he liked people.
The man who served as departmental head to both Whitlam and Fraser